the Society of Petroleum Engineers, Applying the Best Technologies in Extremely Sensitive Environments Workshop.
Listo. Cuando discutíamos en la agenda sobre este tema, vimos la oportunidad de hacer algo no nuevo, algo diferente, pero sí algo que ha tenido mucho éxito. Entonces voy a hacer nada más que una repetición de una presentación que hice en Francia, en Nice, en el 2008. Este es un paper que está publicado con el número 111539, está disponible en Petrolink. Y vamos a hablar de right-of-way acquisition and use, y vamos a hablar del caso de oil pipelining Lago Agrio, Ecuador. Lago Agrio, Ecuador, for you that are not from Ecuador, is a very conflictive area, probably really fair to be conflictive in my opinion. The oil industry has done a really poor job in that town that was born with the oil and gas business. This is more or less the project that we work very close with world's environmental scientists, and in fact this paper was co-authored with Mark Thorber, that is among the people here. And we were looking at building a tank farm and a 10 kilometer, a tank farm in this location and a 10-kilometer pipeline connecting our tank farm with the larger OCP terminal. Lago Agrio, as I expressed earlier, has been a historical location that where any project that was proposed or any project that was going to be built generated a lot of resistance from people and always existed an atmosphere of conflict. It's important to keep in mind that by those days, we were also having, few months earlier, the construction of the big OCP terminal as well as the associated pipelines. So, in everybody's mind, it was really, really fresh, conflict, problems, and issues. Keep that in mind. Second, as you noticed in the previous picture, the urban development was really chaotic and totally disorganized. When I am said chaotic, really meant that. It's like the shanty towns that we have all around the big cities. Then you also have the issue about the famous Chevron Texaco case. LA's Lago Agrio is the capital of that, where all the legal issues and all the lawyers and all the people being the plaintiffs in the case has Lago Agrio as the base. Also, we discovered in the process that for whatever reason the regulator was demanding 30 meters right-of-way per pipeline. Keep this in mind because we are talking about a combination of 4 and 5 pipelines as the end of the process. And I already mentioned this. And also something peculiar was that not only this operator was in need of doing this, tie-in and using this right-of-way, there were 3 other operators exactly on the same need. By those days, those 3 other operators were totally independent. It means we have the operator in charge plus 3 additional operators. Nowadays, with the changes in Ecuador, there's only 3 operators in the area instead of 5. So strategically, we decide that we need to really engage the stakeholders. And I'm not going to repeat all the issues that we have learned here, but I can confirm that everything that you have heard was applied here and I'm only going to highlight a couple of or 3 innovations that we did. Okay. We all have heard about that the success of engaging with stakeholders requires transparency and being honest. I reiterate that. Second, nothing is fixed on a stone. Nothing is the final saying. We went with a mindset that what is the best for us not necessarily was going to be the best for all the stakeholders. And that was an internal issue that brought a lot of discussions and arguments, but our final version was still subject to confirmation and concurrence of the communities. In some cases, even approval. Not only agreed with us, but we needed, because of the circumstances, approval too. The mapping of stakeholders, everybody talked about that yesterday. Then, the same issue. We want to be different. We need to bring innovation, the highest environmental and social initiatives. We don't want to do something cheap. We don't want to be criticized as the previous operators were. Then we search in a very deep grassroots process for synergies. Synergies with the stakeholders. But I'm not talking about only the mayor, the fancy stakeholders. I was talking about the Association of Carpenters of the city, the Association of Journalists, the Association of Friends of the Church, the Association of Enemies of the Church. I mean, we work with every single stakeholder, and you will see later why. Then, the key reason associated with that was to negotiate a compensation project, a single compensation project for the 4 operators. There was no possible way that a negotiation was going to be done partially and the stakeholders or the communities could have a direct negotiation with any or each or all different 4 operators. And here we did something very unique, and I will refer to that in a few minutes. And obviously the key objective as usual, safety, compliance, no fatalities, no delays, and have a clear investment process. Among us is one of the guys that was critical also, the facilities construction manager, Bruce Onko. I remember the frustration in the beginning. He wanted to kill me and my team because all these crazy ideas. But later on, we built this in 4 months, 0 stops, 0 blockades, and integrated the whole community in the process. What we did different? First of all, as usual, creating the multidisciplinary team approach, but 4 tiers. We increased 1 additional tier, more the conventional one. That was what I call the grassroots. We have the grassroots, those really working and living within the community. Then you have the community coordinators or the community relations people, then middle management and senior management. So the grassroots was a big, big difference. Then everything we did, we created a database, a very systematic process to review. One of the typical questions is there's so many information, too much information, even on biological issues, in everything. Managing data was critical. We systemized that and did a very, very systematic approach to that. The engagement with communities, absolutely transparent, and as I said, extensive. Although yesterday I heard the terminology, stakeholder, what was the word, Edgar? Fatigue, stakeholder fatigue. Oh, in this one, probably was, fatigue was not an option for us because we have too many activities going on with them. Then we always look at the streamlining the social license to operate, because we have in Ecuador, and like any other countries, you have a license, environmental license, but you gain and you reach as a goal the social license to operate. Then open discussion and analysis of primary and secondary environmental and social impacts, and here for me was the big, big difference. Reaching consensus with the stakeholders. I mean, reaching consensus is a real challenge, to be honest. If you plan to have consensus, you have to be really open and have a lot of patience and sometimes even compromise a little bit of money in the beginning. What else? Talking about teamwork, I think we already mentioned all of these issues before. Project evaluation and stakeholder dialogue and compensation negotiations. Project approach, regulatory authorities feedback. Here I just want to highlight every single step that could compromise anything related to the environmental license or to the approval of the environmental management plan or the environmental and social management plan was carefully checked and discussed with the regulator. Never waited for surprises or for let's see if the regulator agrees. We were always proactive on that way. And then the terminology, inductive negotiation, that brought a lot of questions. What is it? Probably I will leave for the end for answer the question, but in general terms, you interact in a process where you know what they want. They have already expressed through the root grass people or company liaisons, and in some way you have the advantage of negotiating, knowing what they might expect from you. But what we did is let him then have the full perception that they win in everything they want. And engagement with the key stakeholders and regulatory bodies remain as a key issue. Okay, I think here comes the nice part of this presentation. This was similar as Carolina just presented. At tabletop, there were so many options, so many discussions, so many alternatives. We came with a total of 13 alternatives, possible routes to connect what you have on your right side, the Lago Agrio terminal or the Lago Agrio Tank Farm, to the one on the left side, the OCP terminal. So 13 possible alternatives, and the variables that we consider were beyond geographical, seismic conditions, financial conditions. Believe it or not, all these possible routes were associated with community unrest, community interests, and I want to highlight on that. Sometimes among those 13 options, we have the mayor, the cousin of the mayor, the friend of the church, the sister of the sister of the sister, trying to do business with us. Wow, we can become millionaire tomorrow morning if we are able to get that pipeline route or that right of way for us or close to our areas. So after a lot of work, including even a couple of alternatives for multiple river crossing as the alternative number 6, we came to the conclusion that only potentially 7 of them could be built within time and within budget. Then, let's put it this way. The reduction from 17 to 7 was an internal decision. There was at that point not yet the involvement of all the stakeholders. That was something in-house. All the different multidisciplinary team members deciding this. Here comes the issue. When we have 7 alternatives, we went to the field and we opened the book. Totally open book policy with all the stakeholders from A to Z. And through them, we came to the conclusion that 3 possible routes were acceptable for them. And believe it or not, that was not the expected answer. We were internally terrified that we have 3 options. Let's run and make decisions only by number, by time frames, by potential construction challenges that we might have. But before I continue, I want you to just highlight some very important issues. The need that this company, this operator have, it was operating 70 kilometers east from this location. So we were always bringing the storage oil here, but we needed to deliver this to the main shipping line, which is this OCP. So our need was to bring from here, using whatever route, and here comes the unique and the peculiar issues. From this point, we need to tie in to an existing right-of-way, okay? But on this right-of-way, we need to bring our line to the terminal, okay? We were not authorized by the other operator to tie in to the line. It was impossible from technical aspects and for commercial aspects. The same need that we had here, there were other 3 operators coming from different locations from the south, one from here, one from here, one from here, with exactly the same need as we had, exactly the same need. Therefore, our proposal to the operators was, hey guys, instead of you doing independent negotiations for your right-of-ways, let's generate a power of attorney to us, and we take the lead and we negotiate as a single contact and a single source of negotiation the right-of-way that we all required. That was a full innovation. So every time that I negotiated this right-of-way, and the tying points anywhere on the right-of-way was always disclosing that we needed for four operators. So all the stakeholders knew that there were going to exist 4 pipelines there. And therefore, along this final right-of-way, 5 pipelines. Okay, I just have 5 minutes. I have to finish on this. So to make the story short, on sake of time, the final selection from 3 to 1 demanded innovation and being very creative. What we did, and I put the title there, Flexibility Chopper, we start dealing with those 3 key stakeholders along the 3 routes. We heard stories of all kinds, but the most relevant was, guys, we understand what you are proposing, what you are needing, but we believe that there is a single route that will really benefit your community, avoiding social or environmental impacts. And the argument for them was, no, I don't see any difference. But believe it or not, the only possible way for all of them to appreciate the difference was from the sky, flying. And literally, I put more than 70 people in different chopper flights to fly the route. You have to see the faces. I will never forget the faces of so many people by the first time ever asking themselves, am I so important to be in a chopper like the big heads of the oil companies, like the big heads of the government? No, yeah, you are. Get in the chopper, and we guarantee for you to have your own impression of what is the best route. And believe it or not, the consensus was reached. After so many flights and so many hours of flight and helicopter support, all of them came with the consensus that alternative number 2 was the route and the way to go. And to finish, I already mentioned this, 4 operators, single right-of-way, and connected to the existence of a recently negotiated right-of-way of 5 pipelines. Although the law, and I'm not sure if the law has changed, but the law goes back to the late 60s, establishes 30 meters per pipeline. We did everything for the 5 pipelines within a single right-of-way of 30 meters. And believe it or not, one senior stakeholder was the government. And there was, I can assure you, there were issues about the compliance with that obsolete 30-meter right-of-way. Some people complained that we have to do a lot of legal work with the government for us to get the approval of 5 pipelines in a single 30-meter right-of-way. To make the story short, this is what finally was built. It was built in 4 months. As I said, no incidents, no social problems, 0 accidents, and we created a long-term process for offering right-of-way maintenance to the local communities. We supported building capacity and creating certain companies that, as of today, 10 years later, they continue operating and doing the right-of-way maintenance. The 10 kilometers is under SCADA system, never had an incident in the pipeline. And just to understand clearly, this picture is where the potential 200 barrels capacity tank farm existed, never used as to full capacity. This was the terminal where it's supposed to be delivering. And the conclusions, to make my final closure, and I think I am on time. Oh yeah, I still have 1 minute. Communications and education, managing and screening adequate information internally and externally. Negotiation, inductive negotiation method. Multiple levels, multiple tiers, critical stakeholders, witness transparency and facilitate further communication, grant support to keep open communication channels, socially oriented, local labor, local services, health, basic health sometimes, community monitoring, empowerment and veto right for full implementation of the environmental, social, and management plan. I forgot that to mention. As part of the stakeholder engagement, we offer and we guarantee it, and we have applied that in so many other projects, to the communities that they must appoint a spearhead, monitoring leaders, people that we can hire, and we granted to all of them by writing from the senior executive of the company the veto right if we do not comply with the social and environmental management plan during the construction phase. That was crazy, but believe it or not, that was the only tool for them to believe that they were fully empowered. They stopped the project several times, and I can assure you that 99% of those were totally right. They had the right to stop the project. That was the beginning, the first 2 or 3 weeks. The first 2 or 3 weeks. When I said they stopped, they suspended activities until we correct, and immediate corrective actions were put in place, and the project continues. Successful execution, as I mentioned, 400,000 man-hours, accident-free, social unrest-free, and full environmental compliance. Thank you.
The Society of Petroleum Engineers, Applying the Best Technologies in Extremely Sensitive Environments workshop.